to most of the major national shows, and how still, after the fact that the Cowboys haven't been to a Super Bowl since 1995, they're still treated like they're the most important team in the NFL. And I understand their brand is worldwide. It's $1 billion brand. Jerry Jones has been, like I said, a great promoter, but he hasn't been the greatest owner in the world. And right now, going into the season, everybody's talking about their question marks. Well, there shouldn't be question marks with the money those guys have, and the fact they didn't do anything about anything this offseason to make themselves appreciably better. So, I mean, I don't know if you find it ironic, but I was just saying, we've been since the Cowboys last went to a Super Bowl, the Giants have been there 3 times. They're 2-1. You know, we've had the Patriot dynasty. We're in the middle of the Kansas City dynasty. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say is Jerry takes a lot of heat, for their lack of Super Bowl wins. But at the same time, they've averaged, 12 wins a year the last 4 or 5 years. So it's not like he hasn't done a good job getting the team together. These guys have just choked in the playoffs. And for whatever reason, you want to blame Dak, you want to blame the coach, you can blame whoever you want, but I just don't think you can really blame Jerry that they've lost these playoff games.
Well, I'm gonna push back a little bit on that. Yes, he finally got a little bit of control under when he got Garrett as his coach and kept him instead of the immortal Dave Campos and Wade Phillips. Bill Parcells, who maybe didn't have his A game anymore, or really just didn't want to be there because he didn't like working for Jerry, and a couple other maybe decisions he made back down there. And after Aikman, you got to look at Jerry with the whole picture. Yes, he picked Jimmy Johnson. They built what looked to be the dynasty for the ages. He blew it up when he couldn't take Jimmy Johnson getting all the credit. Then it was his drafts that after Aikman retired, they couldn't find a quarterback till they stumbled on Tony Romo. And, he's the whole picture. So, yes, the last 6 years, 7 years, maybe 10 years, they've been right in it. But there was that time between the early 2000s when he made some really horrible choices.
Yeah, I mean, true, but I'm just saying we're talking about right now, right? I mean, are we talking about his whole career? Are we talking about right now? What are we talking about?
Well, I'm talking about right now and his whole career, because right now there's other storylines. I mean, we're not. I think the Cowboys are going to be right in it this year, but there's other storylines that should be addressed, and the national media just glosses right over it. I mean,
yeah, well, that's that. Then we can blame the media. I don't blame Jerry for that. That's his job. I mean, he wants everybody to talk about the Cowboys, and he gets it. So I give him a lot of credit for that. I hate the Cowboys. I hate discussing them, but we end up doing it all the time because that's what the ESPN machine talks about. That's what the football world talks about, because Jerry's done a good job promoting his team. The honest to God facts are the last 3 years, they've been 12-5 every year. If you're a team in the NFL, a lot of them would trade their souls to go 12-5 3 years in a row. But Jerry wants to win it all, and I don't blame him. And let's just be honest, it's the players' fault. It's the coach's fault. It's not Jerry doesn't play. Jerry gets the team together and puts them in a position to win. They have won, and then they choke in the playoffs. And, that's why, CeeDee Lamb wants a new deal. Micah Parsons wants a deal. Dak wants a deal. Mike McCarthy wants a new contract. I've got to give Jerry a lot of credit for finally saying, you know what, why don't you guys win something, and then I'll give you the money, because he's paid a lot of guys to do not much. And I think he wants to pay guys that are going to get him some playoff wins. And that's what he's saying right now. Win some playoff games and I'll give you some money.
Yeah, but could be, the other thing in proving a point and overcompensating for his past mistakes, you might lose a Micah Parsons when he has a chance for free agency. It's doubtful. I mean, I don't think he's going to find a better stage for himself, but you never know. He might sit there and go, well, then I'll just see what my worth is on the market. I think CeeDee Lamb is kind of, as wide receivers are, you're kind of pigeonholed. You're stupid if you walk away from where you're successful as a wide receiver. That's why when we get into Brandon Ayuk, I got some opinions on him. And I mean, Dak, I think Dak is I'm not going to say middle. He's a top 15 quarterback. But that fluctuates. There's about 5 quarterbacks I'd probably put ahead of him at least, if not more, if I was going to sit down and put my list together. But he's been an effective quarterback regular season. It's funny that he and Romo seem to have the same problem. Great regular season quarterbacks. In the playoffs, not so much, which is really weird between 2 quarterbacks. They both have the same problem.
True, and I think he's tired of paying for guys that play well during the season and don't win in the playoffs, and so I don't really blame him for wanting to see results. And you know what? Sometimes when guys have their backs up against the wall and they have prove it years, it brings out the best in people, or at least in instances where people are able to produce, they do produce. So I think this is actually, I don't even really like Jerry, and I hate the Cowboys, but I like what he's doing right now. Like, you want to get paid, you want some money, you want to get a huge contract, you want $50 million a year, don't get embarrassed by the Packers in the first round.
Yeah, we're going to see. It's typical. It's the Cowboys, and we'll have a lot of attention on them, so we'll see what they do. Huge move this week, Judon going from the Pats to the Falcons. You and I were talking last week. I still think the Buccaneers and the Buccaneers maybe have a little bit over them, but man, that just closes the gap. And maybe they got to jump in front of the Bucs in that division. When you bring, as long as he's healthy, he's one of the most effective pass rushers and defenders. He's got championship pedigree with him. He can help a young team be like a quasi coach on that defense. And this could really tip the scale for Atlanta. What do you think?
Well, not only Judon, but also Justin Simmons. Those 2 guys together, that is a huge upgrade across the board on this defense. I mean, they got 2 starters and 2 Pro Bowl players in Justin Simmons and Matthew Judon. So I love those moves. I was still kind of iffy on their, defensive personnel, but now I think they've done a lot. I mean, they're still there. It's on paper. I mean, they got to go out and do it. But what they've got on paper right now, I think is probably the best roster in this division from top to bottom. I mean, we're talking offense, defense, quarterback position, everything all together. They've got it all on paper. Now they just have to go do it. I'm not so sure, about this coach just yet. We've seen him before, and the results were not good. So we'll see if he can do it this time around. A lot of guys don't get a second chance like this. So I think, he's got a lot of, I think he's got a lot of proving to do, and he's got a lot of, experience. And I think knows, what not to do based on, what happened in the past. But this is, prove it to me. I mean, I got to see it to believe it. But I mean, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, all these Jake Matthews, all these draft picks that they've gotten, as they've sucked year in and year out. They've drafted these guys all very high. Well, bam, here we go. Now it's time for these guys to put up. And Kyle Pitts is one me and you have already talked about as a guy that needs to produce. And, we're going to hit on that today as far as guys that are kind of in show me years. We just talked about the Dallas Cowboys. Almost their whole roster is in it. And, so are the Falcons. I mean, I think Drake London's got some proving to do. Kyle Pitts, as we just mentioned, has got some proving to do. And then the coach himself needs to prove that he can get it done. But this division has gotten a lot more interesting with the moves that the Falcons have made. I think it'll make it a lot more competitive. And I expect one of these teams to be, over 500 when they win the division this time, which holy shit, team in the South, winning more than 9 games. That would be, something we haven't seen in a while.
Well, it'd be a big step if one of them could take all 4 games against the Saints and the Panthers to get that 4 games, which one of those 2 teams should get it against those 2 teams.
Yeah.
So that should be four wins right there to get yourself started, and that's always a nice way to go. Brandon Ayuk now has become the talk of the preseason. Uh, Good wide receiver. See, the thing that worries me about him is, and I've seen this before, and I'm not going to compare him to him, but I go back to the days of Michael Irvin and Alvin Harper. And Alvin Harper, when he left Dallas at that time, never knew how good he had it. When he had guys like Michael Irvin on the other side, and Novacek taking a lot of the coverage problems away from him and giving a lot of single coverage. And um, be careful what you wish for with Ayuk. I mean, going away from Shanahan, who is a great schemer, he's in a good situation. Debo Samuel, great player, but he goes down at least a couple of times each year, which opens up more availability for to be the centerpiece of the passing game. I don't know. What do you think about his demands, and where do you think he might end up?
Right now it's looking like he's going to the Steelers. There's a deal in place that he's agreed to. He just hasn't signed it for whatever reason. I guess it's because the 49ers haven't signed it yet. They still think they can get something done. If I'm the 49ers at this point, I'm get the hell out of here.
Well,
I mean, this team doesn't need Brandon Ayuk to win. Now, do they need Trent Williams?
yes.
Yeah, they need Trent Williams. They need Brock Purdy. They need Christian McCaffrey. But Brandon Ayuk, you know what? He's good. He's got great numbers. But you know what? I'm like with you. I think you take him and you put him on a different team. He doesn't really scare me that much. And I think he's been living off of, people putting 8-9 guys in the box to try.
We just lost Nate. I'm sure he'll be back in a minute. I think he was talking about the running game and how great a running game that Shanahan puts together. He always puts pressure on the safeties to come up and support against the run game. Even with Debo Samuel had to be his best running back or quasi running back wide receiver. The other thing is you got a George Kittles and you got Debo Samuel plus a slew of backup wide receiver. Oh, here he comes back. Yeah, I was trying to finish your thought, and I think I got close to it. When you think about the fact that San Francisco's run game forces those safeties to come up, and then you have a lot of talent there, and Shanahan scheming it. So a lot of pressure you can say. And the other thing that if I was Ayuk and I would look at it, and both of you and I respect Mike Tomlin, but right now his quarterback room is a big question mark. And Ayuk, do you want to go to Pittsburgh where you got Russ, who may or may not be able to be saved, and you got Fields, who may need a year or two of seasoning because of what Chicago did to his head and his way of playing. So going to Pittsburgh might not be a great answer for you, at least the first year, if this quarterback situation doesn't work itself out quickly.
Yeah, I think this is actually a pretty good spot, though, because I like the quarterback room in Pittsburgh way more this year than I did last year. I like Russ, who I think is pretty washed, but still, I like a washed Russ and Justin Fields more than I do, Pickett and Mason Rudolph. So I like what they've got going on there more than I did. And then I like the surrounding cast. I like Najee Harris. I love George Pickens. Van Jefferson is serviceable. They've got Quez Watkins, who showed flashes with the Eagles. Roman Wilson, they drafted out of a team we won't talk about. They've got two good tight ends and Pat Fryermuth and Darnell Washington, and the offensive line's gotten better. So, if you can add Brandon Ayuk to this team, I think it's one location where he would be set up for success. And also, they need another guy. I just Calvin Austin, he's kind of a burner. So is Quez Watkins and Calvin Austin are, to me, the same guy. Roman Wilson's already banged up. Andy's a rookie. So I think they need one more guy to add to George Pickens and Van Jefferson to make it work. Because Van Jefferson, to me, is a 3, maybe a 4 at best. George is a 1. But who's the 2 on this team? They don't have one. And so I think, Brandon Ayuk would be a nice addition to help this offense live up to their potential.
Let's go back to Trent Williams for a minute. Obviously, when he's healthy and he's on the field, he's one of the best, if not the best, offensive lineman in the NFL. But how old is he?
He's old. He's old. He's pushing. He's over 30 years old. I believe he's 36, if I memory. I know he was born around 88 or 89, so he's 36 years old. He's on the he's on the reserve list right now due to injury from last year and off-season surgery, and he's holding out. I don't know what you do with this contract. I just don't think you can give him a long-term deal, which is probably what he wants. But you've got to bring him back because you do not have a replacement for him at this point.
So it's kind of like in this kid's situation, unlike the Ayuk situation, Lynch didn't have another option to go out and get him. And it's hard to replace an offensive lineman, especially with the quality of his. You don't get offensive linemen that can step right in and do what he does. They love to throw around that term generational talent. Well, he's a generational talent. He's the Anthony Munoz of his generation, pretty much, and he's proven it time and time again. A lot of people are just praising what Caleb Williams is doing so far in camp. Should we be pumping the brakes on this just a little bit because it is camp and it is preseason? Or
I'd love to see what he does in a game. I mean, he threw for 95 yards. He led them to 2 field goal drives against the Bills, second and third teamers. So I'm not ready to give him rookie of the year just yet. Adrian Martinez looked really good for the Jets. Are we gonna make him a starter in the NFL? Right. No. So that's why these games don't count, because they don't mean shit. Right. So, we'll see. Let's be honest. He's got a lot more to work with than Justin Fields ever did. I think if they would have put these pieces around Justin, we would be talking differently about him right now. So he's got a lot to work with as far as, based on what they didn't have last year and the year before. So I think he's set up for success as far as the guys around him, but I think there'll be some growing pains. And, I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's going to have a CJ Stroud kind of year. I mean, I think he'll be all right. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him once the real bullets start flying.
It's funny. I was listening to another sports talk show this week, and they were talking about coaches on the hot seat. And that was one of the things we talked about before we get talking about people on the hot seat right now. So we might as well start out with these coaches, because we're going back to a topic we started this show with. In the show I was listening to, they said 3 of the 4 coaches in the NFC East are all on the hot seat, which would be Dable, Sirianni, Mike McCarthy. Dan Quinn's in his honeymoon phase, so he's not working for Snyder anymore. So I think he's going to get a couple of years to work things out in Washington. But the surprising one for me, before we get to the other 2, is Sirianni. Now, we know last year he struggled. He lost his defensive and offensive coordinators in the same year after going to the Super Bowl, which is always tough to replace, especially for a young coach who came in. But since he's been there, I mean, they collapsed last year, but his first 2 years, he was looking pretty good. I mean, does he warrant to be on a hot seat already?
Not in my opinion. I couldn't figure out why people were so upset with him after last year. I mean, yes, they had issues down the stretch. It's a fact. I mean, they did. They struggled, but they were 11-1. Okay, and they were 11-1 with all those things that you just talked about. No brand new offensive coordinator, brand new defense coordinator, and some new personnel. And he still managed to lead them to an 11-1 record. And I agree. I've heard the talk about him being on the hot seat, but I think that's ludicrous. I didn't really understand why they fired their other Super Bowl winning coach, a couple of years afterwards. I mean, I don't know if it was 100% his idea to give Carson Wentz all that money, but then he kind of went down in the same ship that Carson Wentz sunk to the bottom of the ocean in. So I get it. They want to win. They want to win Super Bowls. I understand that, but switching coaches every year is not a recipe for bringing home trophies.
No, and it's not like the Eagles have this huge past of, you maybe have to go back to the 1940s when they were a real powerhouse in the NFL when there was only like 8 teams. I mean, they went decades without getting to the playoffs even and not getting to this and getting to a Super Bowl. I mean, it was between Vermeil's year, and then Andy Reid came to town, and then you finally got Peterson to break through, and then you got Sirianni. So I mean, it's not like they had 25 years of making the playoffs and being a contender. So I think you're right. Howie Roseman's maybe a little bit full of himself because of winning the title with Peterson a couple of years ago, but should maybe give a little bit more credit and patience to these coaches to work things out. And also, I think Jalen Hurts was injured. I think they hit it. I think he played injured. He was not himself over the last few weeks of the season, and I think they were hiding a bigger injury than anybody knew about.
I agree, and this guy still, threw for almost 4,000 yards, completed 65% of his passes, threw 23 touchdowns. Not to mention the fact that he ran 15 touchdowns. So when you've got a guy that throws 22 and runs 15, it's going to take its toll towards the end of the year. So I think he's going to need some help, and I think that's why they brought the running back in that they did. I think that's why they brought him to the table. I mean, they want someone else to run the ball instead of their quarterback, and I think it was a good move. And I think it's going to be a good marriage between Jalen Hurts and Think about this: Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown. All you need to really say. Then you can add in Devontae Smith, Paris Campbell, Dallas Goedert, and the offensive line. I like this offense. I know you feel like they may take a step back. I like this offense a lot. If they can stay healthy, I feel like this is a team that can get back to, looking more like they did the first 12 games of the year instead of the last 6.
Well, I'm just saying it because I just think that Jason Kelsey is about the best center of this generation. And I mean, his leadership on that line, his ability, I'm not even going to get into I like calling it the brotherly shove. I think the tush push sounds really cool.
I think it sounds gross.
Yeah, I like the brotherly shove. I think that's a better way.
Yeah.
But it's just the way they were able to dominate there and just his leadership in the room. Now, that could be replaced. Jalen Hurts, we all know, is a great leader. He was a great leader at Alabama, great leader at Oklahoma. So he could step in, and maybe it won't be that bad a drop off. But I think they are going to face they're replacing Kelsey. That's not
and Fletcher Cox.
Yeah.
I mean, Fletcher Cox has been there almost as long, if not longer, than Jason Kelsey, and he retired also.
Well, me, yeah. You're talking about Fletcher Cox retiring. Maybe my whole thing is that I'm thinking about the Giants, maybe hopefully being able to compete and become a playoff team again. And I'm trying to figure out in my head is a formula for them beating the freaking Eagles because of all the teams in my division, I don't like the Cowboys, but the Eagles have always been the team that I had the biggest resentment for. How you doing?
Hey, I'm just popping in and out here. I don't understand what's wrong with this thing, but it sort of pissed me off. But yeah, I agree with you, man. Fletcher Cox being gone, may affect them. But I like, it's not like they haven't been planning for this. I mean, if you think about, Fletcher Cox is gone, but now they've got Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter manning the middle. And I'm not worried about those two guys at all.
Yeah, like I said, maybe I'm just trying to think in my head a way of coming up with some kind of a crazy way that the Giants could compete with them, but I can't even figure that out now. So maybe I'm hoping for them to come back because I can't figure a way for the Giants to get up. Other storylines, Buffalo. A lot. The worst thing about preseason, and with all you don't know the moves that are going to make it, the moves that aren't going to make it. The Bills now, everybody's like concentrating on Josh Allen. Like he's done nothing. They're making it look like he did nothing over his first 4 or 5 years in the league. that he was being carried by, all by Stephon Diggs. But here's a guy who you were talking about it 3 years ago. Where's the running attack? So he doesn't have to be Mr. Everything on this offense. And it's not going to get any better for him probably this year. Milano's already having surgery on his pec or something.
His bicep. Yeah, he ripped his bicep. And that, he missed last year, and their defense was not the same once he went out. And to lose him again, I think is going to be tough, because who's going to tell everybody how to line up? I mean, you've lost Jordan Poyer, you've lost Micah Hyde. Now Milano's out again, and I think that's going to affect them, especially considering Gabe Davis is gone, Stephon Diggs is gone. This team looks a lot different, and I really don't know what to expect until I see them play, with their starters.
Well, now we know it's not his fault because he's proved that he can coach, but the head coach now, this is on his watch, and you've got Josh Allen, your franchise quarterback is in place. You've been knocking on the door, but you haven't made it to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow's made it to Super Bowl with Taylor already as his coach. How much does this put on the Buffalo head coach to keep this team successful? And how much heavy lifting is he going to have to do to overcome maybe a healthy Burrow, Lamar Jackson-led team, and for God's sake, the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, that's been their Achilles heel has been the Chiefs, and they've been unable to get past them, especially in the playoffs. But, now their division's tougher too. I mean, we just talked about how they've, at least on paper, taken a step back, and now they've, got the Dolphins right there nipping on their heels. The Jets should be a much improved team this year. I mean, hell, they won 7 games last year with Zach Wilson. I mean, they paid $50 million plus to not play Zach Wilson, and then they still had to play him, and they won 7 games. So I expect the Jets to be better unless Aaron Rodgers goes down in the first series again. And it's going to be a tough road to hoe for the Bills. It's just not going to be a cakewalk to win this division. So I worry about them, playing, twice against the Jets, twice against the Dolphins, and the Patriots will be better. I don't think they're ready to compete for the division title, but they're going to be scrappy with Gerard Mayo at the helm. And, I think it does, fall back a little bit on the coach. I think, he's been given some, leniency. They've extended the leash a little bit with some of these losses. And, I haven't really ever heard anybody blame the coach for any of this. I sure did when they had 13 seconds left and he decided not to squib kick it. I mean, all they had to do was squib kick that ball and they would have taken some time off the clock. Not to mention, run any other defense besides the one they ran. They gave that game away, and that to me was on him. So I feel like at some point they got to point the finger somewhere, and they're not going to point it at their quarterback that they gave $300 million to.
And McDermott is the defensive mastermind, supposedly. So that's at least where his expertise is. So you would expect him to have anticipated what Kansas City was going to do that night in one of the greatest games ever played. But it's too bad that Buffalo came out on the short end. Let's look in Cleveland. Stefanski. I love the first hire of Stefanski. I remember him as the offensive coordinator up in Minnesota. Wherever he went, his offenses seemed to do well. He had that 1 year with Baker when Baker was healthy, and they won the first playoff game they had won since, Jim Brown, who knows. And then the whole Baker thing blows up. They bring in Deshaun Watson. They make the playoffs the last year without Deshaun. Flacco comes in and does his Superman from the couch work. But, we know this owner is very illogical. What do you think about Stefanski, and especially in that division where it's going to be tough? It's going to be a 4-horse race from beginning to end.
I agree with that. I think it's going to be a tough division, and I think Deshaun Watson is not who he once was. But I don't think Kevin Stefanski's in any jeopardy. This guy was the NFL Coach of the Year in 2023. for a reason. I mean, they're not going to fire him the year after he was coach of the year.
It's been done.
Not that means shit, but it is true. He was the coach of the year, and the fact that he made the playoffs with essentially his fourth string quarterback who they got off the couch, that's saying something. I mean, he held that team together. It did an amazing job holding that team together, keeping everybody focused on the task at hand, no matter who was behind center. And not to mention, Nick Chubb went down with a catastrophic injury, and that guy was the heart and soul of this team, not to mention one of their best offensive weapons and their main ball carrier. So he went down. Deshaun's basically hasn't really played in the time that he's been there, and this Kevin Stefanski's managed to make this team a contender. So I don't see any way that they're going to fire him. I mean, especially not right now after what he did. I thought that was one of the greatest coaching jobs I've seen of anybody in the NFL in the last couple of years, what he did last year.
Let's go up to the north. I don't even want to get into Minnesota because that's not that coach's fault. That front office just, I don't know what they're doing up there. I want to talk about Dan Campbell. Love Dan Campbell as a coach. I don't think he's really on a hot seat at all, or in terms of getting fired. But there is going to be a lot of pressure on him this year to repeat. And a lot of things went perfect for him last year. And also, they're going to be on everybody's bullseye now. Everybody who's going to play the Detroit, no, you have to bring your A game. And already the injury, Jamar Gibbs getting, if that's a lingering hamstring injury, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a difficult road to hoe. There's no doubt about that, with the Packers being better, the Bears being improved, but the Vikings are a joke. I'm not sure, like you said, what they're doing up there. They're not trying to win. I can assure you that. It's one thing when you go into the season with Sam Darnold as your, starting quarterback, but when you have, a rookie that you're going to throw in at some point, as soon as he stumbles, which is probably game 1 or 2, but now that guy's hurt. So now you've got Sam Darnold as your starter. So it's a mess. But Dan Campbell's not in any way, shape, or form on the hot seat. This guy had the best season for the Detroit Lions since the 50s and led them to the NFC Championship game. I mean, even if they were to have a bunch of injuries and to, suck it up this year, the management's not going to do anything to Dan Campbell. He's proven that he can be a good coach. I know some people question some of the late game time management stuff and play calling and that type of shit, but this guy took the Detroit Lions to the NFC Championship game and was on the cusp of winning it. So he's definitely earned himself at least a year or two, which, used to be you go to the Super Bowl or you go to the NFC Championship game, you get like 4 or 5 years. Now you get like 1 or 2 max. So I think he's good for the time being, for sure.
All right, we'll go down the NFC South, and the only one that sticks out is Dennis Allen. We've talked about him at length. I mean, that was a mistake of a hire. It was a hire that made no sense, and eventually the New Orleans Saints are going to have to figure out and rebuild, and maybe they go back to being the Aints for a little while, but there's no real thing on the horizon for them. The AFC South, everybody's so new. I don't think there's anybody you could say is on a hot seat. I think that all of them are pretty much safe, and I think that division is going to be very competitive. Out in the AFC West, the only team I worry a little bit about, that I think when I bring up first about someone being on a hot seat, not because he deserves to be there, but because every coach that's ever been there, since it seems John Madden's been on a hot seat, is the Raiders. Antonio Pierce won that job and should have won that job last year, just like a couple of years ago. Instead of going out and getting what's his name out of New England, you had a coach who had led them to the playoffs, and you fire a coach that saved your season, which made no sense. And that's why, if I'm Antonio Pierce, I'm not buying real estate in Las Vegas right now.
Nah, I wouldn't buy real estate for sure. I mean, they go out and they fire the guy who takes over the interim role during the disaster of the John Gruden situation, which, we're still And everyone just acts like that didn't happen now, and that John, they released these 5 emails that he wrote that were taken out of context, and now he's a racist and he's not allowed to coach anymore. But well, that's a topic for another day. But Josh McDaniels, does he impress me as a head coach? No. But I mean, once again, how much time do you get anymore in the NFL? I mean, it's like you win now or you're gone. And that's true for every team. I mean, as I said, I think Dan Campbell's safe and Kevin Stefanski's safe, but everybody else, fair game. I mean, is Antonio Pierce going to get 5 years to turn this thing around? No. But what do you really expect out of this Raiders team this year, Joe? Do you expect the Raiders to win the division?
No.
Do you expect the Raiders to make the playoffs?
Nope.
Do you expect the Raiders to win 9 games?
No.
Okay. So what do you want Antonio Pierce to do? I mean, I think if they're competitive, if they do what they did last year and they play hard and they fight and they are in games that they have no business being in, I think he keeps his job, and he should. I mean, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are the 2 options that he gets at quarterback. Good luck winning in a division with Patrick Mahomes with those 2 clowns.
Oh, exactly. And that's the whole thing. It's like we said last week, that the Kansas City is turning the West into what the AFC East used to be. Yeah, put your team together, but Andy Reid and Mahomes are still there, like Brady and Belichick were. So you're all playing for second place. Funny thing, I don't know if you heard about it. The rumor, and of course, conspiracy theories took it to the next level about Harbaugh offering Kaepernick a place on the coaching staff, figuring that if he gets into trouble, he's got his backup quarterback he can throw into the game if Herbert ever went down for like a season-ending injury. I don't know if that's legitimate enough. I mean, the guy hasn't played in almost a decade, if not a decade. When did he get into trouble? Has it been 10 years now?
Kaepernick has not played in the NFL in, I believe, 7 years.
Yeah, it's a lot of years. That's a lot of years, and he's 36 years old.
He turns 37 on November 3rd. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if that was in the back of, and you never know what's in the back of Harbaugh's mind, but if that was what was in the back of his mind, if I was the owner of the Chargers, I'd say win some games before you start playing your little games here, Sonny.
Yeah, I mean, this is no one should be surprised by this. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is just Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I have no idea why he would even talk about this. Why are we having a press conference? Why are we writing news articles about somebody not being on your roster or your coaching staff? It doesn't make any sense. Have we talked about now? Oh, hey, we got a press conference with Robert Saleh. He's stepping to the podium. This year, guys, Nathan Schmidt is not going to be our quarterback. We got Aaron Rodgers, and we really want to. We like Aaron, and we want to see what he can do. And so Nathan Schmidt is not going to be our quarterback. It's like dumbest thing that I've heard in a long time is even talking about who you're not going to have on your team or not going to have on your coaching staff. I love Colin. I'm thinking about bringing him on our coaching staff, but our coaching staff's already put together, so he's not going to be on it. It's like, why do you even hold a microphone in front of this moron?
Well, yeah, I know he stirs your pot like he stirs everybody's pot, and that's what he's good. That's what he's good at. It's not. I don't know if he's as good a coach as he is as a promoter for himself. We talk about Jerry Jones being a promoter. My God, is this guy a promoter?
But how is this a story? Is my question. Why is this a story? Someone asked him if he was going to bring Colin Kaepernick on. He's like, I love Colin, but he's not going to be on our coaching staff, which is already set for the season, and he's not going to be playing on the roster either. And then all of a sudden, that's an article on ESPN. It's like, I get it that it's the woke network, but why is that? Why would you even print that shit? I don't get it.
Because you know what it is? Because preseason football, there's not really anything going on, and because they're still all competing for jobs. It's just like I think if you go to camp, I've been to one pro camp as a reporter, and a lot of standing around, a lot of doing nothing. I was there to interview a kid who was trying out for the Giants who didn't make it. I mean, it was fun for me to be at a Giant camp with credentials and everything else, But there's a lot of standing around, a lot of guys gossiping, going, yeah, well, what do you think? What do you think? Like, and somebody said that would probably somebody had mentioned, somebody in the back of the crowd mentioned that and said, let's make it a story. So who knows? But it was funny because like you said, it controlled the news cycle for about 24 hours. Um, Going out to the NFC West, I mean, Cardinals new. I mean, that guy's it's his second year. Seahawks first year. Shanahan, McVay. I don't see anybody being on a hot seat out there. Expectations with the Cardinals have to be kind of low. And the Seahawks, the guy's just getting there, replacing an immortal guy like Pete Carroll. You got to give him a little time to get his feet wet up there in Seattle. But I don't see. What do you think the storylines of the West will be? Can the Rams finally beat the 49ers during the regular season so maybe they can take control of that division?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest storyline, obviously, right now is, what's the Niners roster going to look like? Are they going to be able to get Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk to join the team? And are they going to be, as successful as they were last year? We talked about, some of the lingering injuries. You were talking about Jahmyr Gibbs and players like that. Well, obviously, Christian McCaffrey's dinged up a little bit as well. He's not playing in the preseason. They're going to need him. And they're going to need Trent Williams. And even if they trade away Brandon Ayuk, which I think at this point they need to go ahead and do, they're going to need Pearsall, the rookie, to step up. They're going to need Jawan Jennings to keep doing what he does and make big catches when they need him. And they're going to need Deebo Samuel to stay healthy. So I really feel like it's a two-team race. Seattle, to me, doesn't really scare me with their roster. I like their wide receivers, I like the running back room, but, Geno to me is kind of more of a flash in the pan. He had one really good year, and I think that's what we're going to get out of him. And they're already talking about, Sam Howell and that they like him. I don't know if he's the
answer.
I don't think he's their franchise guy going forward, but could I see a situation where maybe Geno struggles, Geno gets dinged up, the Seahawks are having a bad season and they turn to Sam Howell? Definitely.
Yeah, so I think you're totally right on that. That's not going to be the storyline there. But let's get around to the injuries here because we can get to the Rams right now. Their boy Puka needed week to week with a knee injury, and that is going to be something to keep your eye on with that guy because he showed how important he was last year as a rookie. And that's a big weapon for Stafford to lose.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to see any injuries before the season starts, but they've got a lot of guys banged up right now. Puka's had some issues, but McVay said he'll be ready for week one. This guy's tough as nails, so I don't worry about Puka playing. But they've got some other guys, Havenstein, Jonah Jackson, both have had some lingering problems throughout the season. Alaric Jackson, the offensive tackle, has been banged up. Brennan Jackson, the linebacker's been hurt. Matt Stafford's got a hamstring right now. Braden Fisk, their big D tackle, is questionable. So there's a lot of injuries already going around with the Rams, and you'll see that a lot with camp. But they need everybody at full strength if they're going to be able to compete with the Niners. There's just not a very margin for error.
No, not at all. Another guy is going to be Christian Kirk down with Jacksonville, nursing a calf injury. Calf injuries must be something going around camp. What do you think? But that doesn't sound like it's too big a deal right now. Any other injuries jumped out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals, are in big time trouble with their tackle Deontay Smith. He suffered a patellar tendon injury. That's a big problem. He's expected to miss the entire season. Is he maybe the starter? Probably not. But this is the guy who was going to be their swing tackle, and that just takes a huge hit out of their line. And they've got Trent Brown, they've got Amarius Mims, who are still there. They've also got Cody Ford, but But this guy going down is definitely a problem if they have any more injuries. And this is, before the season even starts. So that to me is a big time problem. Obviously, up in Minnesota, getting having their quarterback go down before the season even starts. And I know that they're saying Sam Darnold is their starter, but we know what Sam Darnold is. He sucks, and he's going to suck, and he's always sucked. And I'm sorry to say that, but he's just not good. And to have your rookie quarterback heading to IR before the year even begins, that's going to be a big problem. And I expect the Vikings to struggle big time. But there's injuries all the time. But we've seen quite a few guys already go down, and we talked about up in Milano, up in Buffalo. That's huge. BJ Ujulari already is out for the year for the Cardinals. That's going to be a pretty big problem for them. And there's other teams that are having guys that are out, already, which is, that's a big, huge issue when you got guys going down before the season even begins. Obviously you don't ever see that. Chris Evans, the backup running back for the Bengals, he's out for the season. They had two guys go down on the same day. Deontay Smith, who I already mentioned, and Chris Evans, both went down with injury on the same day and are lost for the season. Greg Newsome, the corner for Cleveland Browns, he's got a hamstring. He's going to be out at least for the foreseeable future. Nick Chubb is still, when's he coming back? We don't know. Jedrick Wills, he's banged up. So there's a lot of injuries going on with the Browns right now that, are going to cause some problems and going to be something to watch.
Okay. Let's swing back around to the Giants. Dable, he lost his best running back. He also lost a lot of weight too. God bless him. But the Giants, I don't know if I should be happy they're being overshadowed by the Jets, which it's hard to not be overshadowed when you got Aaron Rodgers in town, or they're intentionally being quiet, and that's a good sign. What are you hearing about your sources, and what you're observing about the Giants? What do you think about the Giants right now, and what we should look for this weekend, or what should I be looking for tomorrow when they take the field?
The good news with them is they have not had anybody, of substance that's gone down. Obviously, Tyrone Tracy, their rookie running back, got carted off the field. But they found out that wasn't, as big a deal as they once hoped. The biggest thing that I want to look for is, what is the health of Daniel Jones?
Mm-hmm.
What that's going to be how this team rolls. What does he look like? Is he going to play in the preseason at all? Is he going to be able to get back to what he looked like before the injury? And also, how do they incorporate Malik Neighbors? This guy's walked in day one and became their number one wide receiver. That doesn't usually happen. You don't usually come in as a rookie and be the number one guy. I think that says a lot about the room that was there. It also says a lot about him and how good he is. But, the first preseason game, they didn't even target him. He had no catches. I want to see them throwing the damn ball, okay? I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care who, who's back there throwing it. I want somebody to throw it to him and see what that looks like. But, Saturday, tomorrow, they're going to play at the Houston Texans. And I think there's a lot of things to be interested in. But most of all is obviously the quarterback and also Malik Neighbors. What does he look like? Can we get him the damn ball and see if he can catch it since he's going to be pivotal in their offense?
And as we come towards our wrap up, we started the show talking about a problem where I have with a guy getting so much attention. I was listening to another national show, Odell Beckham Jr. He's in Miami this year, I believe. Correct. And I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., if you take away those first 4 years, I think, with the Giants, it's like his career doesn't measure up to anything spectacular. And I know a lot of it has to do with injuries. Like, you can't take that away from him. But as one guy brought out and said at that time, I wonder what it would have been like if he wasn't such a – I don't want to say it wasn't all his fault, but if he didn't get himself run out of town, what would he have been like, and what would his career have been if he could have stayed on the Giants? Would it have been different for him, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the grass is not always greener. Some of these guys you were talking about with the wide receivers, they think they can just go to every team, any other team, and replicate the success they've had, and that's not always the case. This guy's had a good career. I mean, there's no doubt, but nothing's ever come close to what. I mean, he was a superstar when he was in New York. He was talked about nonstop. He was on SportsCenter every night.
Cover of Madden.
Yeah, cover of Madden, anything you want. And since then, it's just been not the same. And injuries have been a part of that. 2017, he went down. He only started 2 games. 2018, he only played in 12 games. 2019, he played in Cleveland, had a pretty decent year where he started 15 of 16. And then since then, it's been nothing but injuries. With only playing 7 games in 2020. And then, 2021, he was on the Browns and also the Rams. So he was playing on 2 different teams. And, we wanted to give him the Super Bowl MVP trophy for the first half he had.
Yeah, for catching 1-2 passes.
But, last year, I guess you could say he was okay in Baltimore. But this guy's 31. He's going to be 32 years old this year. A lot of that speed, a lot of that athleticism is gone.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he's going to ever be, what he was.
Yeah, he kind of, who he kind of reminds me of that started out so fast and then kind of faded fast. It was Andre Rison. It was kind of like, all of a sudden, once the injuries started happening and the controversy started happening, he went from being, a feared wide receiver to an afterthought.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Well, he had a lot of things going on off the field too, with Left Eye burning his house down, and getting a little too much drinky, and lots of partying going down.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for when you pick the woman to live with. It's like don't go with those batshit crazy ladies. They'll never turn out well. Let's talk a little NCAA football. I didn't get to see your show last week. Give me a little background on what you guys talked about.
Yeah, we broke down the Big Ten and also the SEC this past weekend, and we gave our top 5 teams for both conferences. We were pretty close as far as which teams we liked. In the SEC, we both had Georgia number 1. We both had Texas number 2. I think James had. I think I had Alabama number 3, and James did not. He thinks that the loss of Saban is going to set them back a little bit further than I do. I do think it's going to affect them. I don't think they're guaranteed to, make the national championship like they do every year. But let's be honest, it's going to be a 12-team playoff this year. Bama's going to be in it. So I see them there, but the teams that we both had in that group was Georgia, Texas, Bama, Missouri, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and kind of on the outside looking in was Oklahoma.
You always talk about it. You're better off being the man who replaces the man who replaces the legend, and it's true in most cases. Most guys, don't do well after. But there are exceptions. Remember when Jimmy Johnson left Miami for Dallas, Erickson came in there and kept them quite competitive, and they won a national championship with them. So, it can be done. The coach just has to embrace the situation and say, okay, I'm here to do a job, and I just want to continue to be a winner here.
Hey, Butch Davis left, and Larry Coker kept winning in Miami as well, so it's possible. But Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time.
Yeah,
and
so
even though Kalen DeBoer has done nothing but win since he got there, he's not Nick Saban. He's never going to be Nick Saban. So I do think that they've still got they were able to keep a lot of their players. They were able to recruit like they do. They were able to sign guys through the portal. They're going to be just fine. And that's why I expect them to still compete for the SEC.
All right. And what's on the tap for this week?
We're covering the rest of the conferences. So we broke down the SEC and the Big Ten. And then this weekend, we're going to continue on with the rest of the Big Four or Power Four or whatever the hell you want to call it. And we're going to touch on the Big 12, which I call the Big 16 because there's actually 16 teams now. And also the ACC, or all crap teams is what some people call them. But they are still a conference at this point. And so we got to talk about the ACC and also the Big 12.
All right. I wanted to ask your indulgence for just a couple of seconds here because over the last 2 weeks, I lost two good friends. Suddenly they passed away. One of them was a guy named Lester Charlie Bounty. Charlie Bounty, big boy, came out of Darien, Connecticut, went on to play football in the 80s for Rutgers and then URI. He finished his career, actually had a tryout with the Dallas Cowboys. And if the didn't come into a neck injury, he might have played for the Doomsday defense under Tom Landry. He passed away on August 6th. Suddenly, one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. Another one of my best friends passed away 2 days ago, John Kennefic, big time Met and Giant fan. We've been a lot of times wringing our hands over those two teams. Great guy, great wife, great children, great grandchildren. And I'm going to miss those two guys greatly. And I just want to give a little tribute out to them tonight before we go out off the air.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. Thoughts and prayers are with you, man. It's tough when, even starting to get to be my age, when people start going down, it makes you realize, how fragile life is and how lucky we actually are to wake up each day. So I try and keep telling that to myself when things piss me off.
Yeah. The work shouldn't get you down that much. I agree. I have to fight myself with that too. Yeah. All right, my friend. Have a great weekend. We got football back. I'll be doing football, watching football the next 2 days. Looking forward to it because the Mets are seemingly sinking into the East again. And they gave us a little flash in July, and now they're back to being the Mets. So thank God. I don't care how bad the Giants looks right now. It's so good to have football back.
Yeah, we got a little preseason action going on this weekend. Lots of games on Saturday. And I believe there's a couple games on Sunday as well with the Packers and the Broncos and the Saints and the 49ers. So we'll get a little look. Lots of people hate preseason football. Not me. I love preseason football. I love to see the position battles. I like to see the young guys getting out there and getting a chance and trying to make a team. It's something that I enjoy because I watch so much college football. I know a lot of these guys.
Exactly.
And it's fun to me to see them trying to live their dreams in professional football.
Yeah, the transition is always difficult, and the ones who make it through become legends.
No doubt.
All right, my friend. Have a good weekend. I hope the parent-teacher thing went out. She get a thumbs up yesterday?
We're doing good. We're doing good so far, man. First grade, we're knocking it out of the park. So I think a lot of it has to do with Operation Kitty. I told her that if she can do what she did last year and get good behavior grades and good grades from her teacher, that I will buy her a kitty. And so far, she looked at me and she was like, "Let's shake on it, Dad." And she made me shake her hand, and she's like, "Now it's a contract." And I'm like, this girl, she's 6 years old, and sometimes she says stuff, and I think she's 37. So it's pretty funny, but she's laser focused to bring that kitty home.
All right, my friend. Have a good weekend. I will see you next week.
All right, buddy.
Talk to you later.